The Iowa Caucus is coming up on January 15th. As the candidates rush into the Hawkeye state, I'll analyze their campaign strategies. I'll start by briefly mentioning Chris Christie. His campaign is solely focused on New Hampshire right now, so he's spending no time in Iowa. He's essentially ignoring the state. So the first serious candidate that I want to discuss is Nikki Haley. Now, Nikki Haley is in a tough position. Her chance to win this primary is in New Hampshire. If Haley can win New Hampshire, this race completely changes. So she's having to divide her time between Iowa and New Hampshire. Right now, her strategy seems to be doing fewer events in Iowa, but having larger events near the more major cities. That's an incredibly different strategy than a candidate like Ron DeSantis. DeSantis, on the other hand, has staked everything on Iowa. If DeSantis can't win or perform well in Iowa, his campaign is over. He has the endorsement of Kim Reynolds, the governor, Bob Vander Plaats. He's performing relatively well in the state. So DeSantis is pouring all of his time into Iowa. He is campaigning with his campaign and his super PAC, Never Back Down. Kim Reynolds is campaigning for him, and even his wife, Casey, has been doing a small tour around the state. Everything relies on Iowa for Ron DeSantis. Now, that's also a slightly different strategy than Vivek Ramaswamy. Vivek also has an Iowa-centered strategy, but his is slightly different. He is doing as many events as possible. Vivek is doing 8, 9, 10 events a day, going from small town to small town, going into restaurants, little small gatherings. He's trying to make those personal connections that can really benefit a candidate on caucus night. Now, many seem to be underplaying Vivek. Vivek is putting significant time and energy into Iowa. So I'm guessing he will earn a few percentage points with this aggressive campaign strategy. And then there's Donald Trump. Trump is visiting Iowa much less than many of the other candidates. His attention is divided between his legal battles and the campaign. So Trump's visits to Iowa have to be huge. That's why he's having much larger events than many of the other candidates and campaigns. Trump here is really relying on his name recognition. He's relying on his broad popularity in the GOP. His campaign is hoping that will be enough to pull him over the finish line and beat the other candidates like DeSantis and Haley. So, out of all the candidates with their varying strategies, who's best positioned going into these final few weeks? Well, obviously, Donald Trump is the clear favorite for the Iowa caucus. But at the same time, there are many other factors that play into this event. The Iowa caucus happens at night in January. It's usually very cold. Only the most dedicated voters come out and caucus. So the candidates that have the most hardcore support really seem to shine on caucus night. Candidates like Vivek and DeSantis, who are really pounding the pavement, getting one-on-one with voters, do seem to have an advantage historically in the state. And then there's a candidate like Nikki Haley, who has some optimism going into this caucus. She has some momentum, and she doesn't have to score first. Haley just needs a strong performance. There's a ton on the line for these candidates, and in the upcoming days, I'll make my predictions for percentages for each of the candidates. So make sure you subscribe so you don't miss more updates as the primary gets started.